This is all nothing to do with it. The only answer I can give is what you probably know, because you're quite good in data. Normally you started with data this question, so.
Arne Slot is not just an elite football manager, he's also an elite question avoider. Ask him a question about Alexander Isak or Mark Gahey, you're going to get a joke about donuts. Who knew? There was actually quite a few jokes in Arne Slot's press conference this morning, which shows he's in a really good mood ahead of the game against Arsenal, even though it's a massive clash. He has some interesting things to say about the way things went against Newcastle, including pushing a little bit back on my question around Florian Wirtz. But he also outlined the fact that Liverpool are going to be working hard on set pieces, and also gave some interesting ideas about what exactly it's going to take to win the Premier League, which may be a little bit different to in previous years. We'll go through everything that he had to say, including some of the bits I've not mentioned yet. Back in the lab. Welcome back to the lab. Now, I have to confess, I really enjoyed today's press conference. Now, I mentioned the jokes earlier, but it really is indicative of what a kind of a relaxed atmosphere Arne Slot likes to have at these press conferences, even for such a massive game like Liverpool against Arsenal, when you consider the ramifications of the top two in the Premier League from last season and what it could mean for the Premier League title coming forward this season. Now, we've seen our Jurgen Klopp a lot of the time. He'll go into press conferences and they'll be very tense and everyone will be kind of walking on eggshells around their questions. And I always find in those situations it's harder to get anything of a real note from the manager. But Slot comes in, he's cracking jokes, he's relaxed, even when he knows there's questions he doesn't want to answer. And yet we were still able to get so much great stuff from him. And a lot of the great stuff came completely unprompted, which we're going to go on to in some of the top takeaways. But there's genuinely so much to talk about in the Liverpool world, as I mentioned in my tweet earlier. You could have spoken about the game, could have spoken about the Newcastle game, could have spoken obviously about the transfer window, could have spoken about the Champions League draw, and not all of them got covered. For example, no one spoke about the Champions League draw at all. And the thing that you normally hear in most other press conferences, i.e. team news, was almost an afterthought at the very end. On team news then, we should point out that there were no new injuries after Newcastle. Everyone who had been in recovery got a little bit closer. So obviously Conor Bradley did well from having his time on the pitch. He'd had a few training sessions between Friday and Monday, so it looks like he's going to be able to continue being in contention. Alexis Mac Allister sounded like he was going to be in contention as well. Whether or not he's going to come straight back into the starting lineup, we don't know. But again, no one asked that question because there was so much other things to ask about Arne Slot. As so much in the Liverpool world right now is fascinating. And without any further ado, let's get cracking into it. Top takeaway number one, Liverpool have gone heavy on set pieces this week. This was one of the things that Slot mentioned unprompted about Liverpool and set pieces and how bad they've been in against Newcastle and against Bilbao, and also how good Arsenal are at set pieces. Now, this may have been a bit of a preemptive strike because he knew, because of those two things, that someone was probably going to answer that question or ask that question, should I say. I mean, we didn't, so thank you. But I do also think it means that it's been on his mind and they've been clearly working on it throughout the week. Michael Cox, journalist and analyst, did a really good article in the week about how Liverpool changed how they've defended set pieces, going a little bit deeper, using the Italian style to maybe come onto the ball rather than going from being a high line and having lots of space behind them, which worked for the most part until they changed it and then it didn't work. So it'll be interesting to see if that persists, but as we all know, Arsenal are very good at set pieces, so Mikel Arteta will also have seen that and will be working very hard on something to counteract it. Now, one thing I had noticed about the set pieces that Liverpool have been conceding from, a lot of them are individual errors. Some of them are structural, but a lot of them are individual errors. So Milos Kerkez, and in particular Ibrahima Konate, are going to have to be a lot sharper than they were against Newcastle. Konate, I think, has had a lot of focus on him these last couple of days in terms of the two poor performances in a row so far this season. So he'll want to prove that he's still one of the best centre-backs in the league against arguably the other elite pairing in the division in Saliba and Gabriel. The other thing Slot mentioned about set pieces, and this was almost a throwaway line, but I don't think it quite was. He kind of mentioned that Newcastle had 350 set pieces in that game, which obviously is an exaggeration. And I feel like it's almost a little bit of a kind of a slide dig, but not quite. I think what it is a reminder to his team to not give away so many needless set pieces. Newcastle had 7 corners and 15 free kicks, 22 throw-ins. Now, obviously, not all of them were in dangerous positions, but when you look at where on the pitch the free kick was taken that they scored from, it shows you how far away from goal a set piece can be to be dangerous. So, as much as Liverpool need to get better at defending them, they also need to get better at not giving so many away. I think that's something we hope to see against Arsenal on Sunday. Top takeaway number 2, this is not the final form. Now, Slot was asked about the importance of this game against Arsenal and about maybe losing ground on a potential title rival, and Slot wasn't really concerned about it in terms of Arsenal being a title rival, more just concerned of how teams at the beginning of the season aren't quite at their best and the ability to stay in the race without necessarily dropping away. And it is an interesting point to consider, a point of difference between this season and last season. If you think about how much churn, how much difference there is between this team and the team that was last year. Last year, they weren't getting used to new players. They were only getting used to a new manager. And this was a new manager who wasn't entirely different from the old one. And that continuity allowed them to go out with a really fast start, win 11 of their first 13 league games. This season around, there is so much more churn. So he's not really overly concerned about the issues he's seen from his team. He's more happy that they're still able to win games while not being at their best, now getting up to their best. The other part that he mentioned, which was around how there's going to be no Premier League record for points total this season, how everybody has got so much better, so the league's going to be more competitive, which means that everybody's going to drop points, which means it's less of a disaster if you drop points. Now, the way that he framed it was to say that everyone's got better, no one's going to have a massive points total, and that's kind of really where the headlines are. But if you read between the lines, what he's really saying is that if Liverpool don't win this game, it's not the end of the world. I think that's a really important point to remember because, number one, it is very early in the season, and as I said earlier, last season they got off for this flying start, and it really helped set them up for the league win. So if they were to get a draw, or maybe even, dare say, a defeat to Arsenal in this game, there will be lots of people who will be concerned for how Liverpool are going to go about it. Arne Slot is not concerned. Arne Slot is adamant that everybody's going to lose games, everybody's going to drop points. So doing it once is not the end of the world, which I think is a very important thing to remember because there will be plenty of think pieces. There have already been plenty of think pieces about how Liverpool aren't as good as they were last season, and I can already see signs of weakness here and here and here and here. Well, look, Liverpool as they are in August and September isn't Liverpool as they're going to be in November, December, January, March, February. I think that's an important thing to remember as well. This team can and highly likely will get better, and that's even before they buy any more players. Top takeaway number 3, the job for Hugo is not just about goals. Now, he was asked about Hugo Ekitike and the flying start he's made to the season, the best of all of the new recruits, scoring a goal every game. But it was notable that Arne Slot didn't talk about his goals at all when talking about Hugo Ekitike. He talked about his link-up play and how impressive that's been. He also talked about his pressing and how that's been good in comparison to what he was used to at Frankfurt, but it needs to get better. He referenced the fact that the biggest thing he can improve on is his match fitness. And partly because of all that pressing, it was almost like he was giving him praise, but also leaving a few nuggets in there to say, like, he's been great, he's been doing lots of pressing, but he has to do a lot of pressing when he's for me. And this all kind of speaks to what it means to be an Arne Slot number 9. You need to be hard working off the ball. You need to be able to link play. And to be fair to Arne Slot, he was consistent in speaking about this last season when he was talking about all of the other number 9s and Diaz and Jota and Nunez, when they were scoring, when they weren't scoring, when they were getting chances, when they weren't getting chances. Rather than talking about the goals and the assists, Slot always went back to the link-up play, the work off the ball, the pressing. These are the building blocks of being a Slot number 9. So as much as I'm sure he's very pleased that Hugo Ekitike has scored lots of goals and he has got off the mark flying, that's not the only thing in his job. That's only a very small part of his job. The other interesting thing about it is when he mentioned the match fitness. Lots of people I've seen in the last couple of days have said that Hugo Ekitike missing out on an international call-up for France would be good news for Liverpool because it allows him to have some time off. You know, there's less chance of him going away and getting injured, which I think most Liverpool fans are always scared about. But I suspect Slot would have preferred him to go because he needs more matches. And those are another way of him getting a bit more matches in his legs. So he will be hard at work at the training ground, no doubt, and he will be getting better and better. But Arne Slot wants to get to a point where he doesn't feel like he has to substitute him. Because as we've seen, every time he has substituted him so far, Liverpool's attacking play has dropped off. Well, that may not necessarily still be the case if they get any more strikers in the building. Yeah. Anyway, let's focus on what Arne Slot had to say about my questions, which are all about Florian Wirtz and what Newcastle did to try and stop him.
Hi Arne, I wanted to ask you about Florian Wirtz. I felt like Newcastle did a really good job of denying him the ball with their bank of 5 across the midfield. I think he only received 19 passes compared to 34 against Bournemouth. If that situation is repeated perhaps against Arsenal, would you like him to maybe work harder to maybe come deeper to search for the ball, or is the onus more on his teammates to maybe be a bit braver and try and pass through the lines?
No. This is all nothing to do with it. The only answer I can give is what you probably know because you're quite good in data. Normally you started with data this question, so you should add in this question that there was only 40% ball in play in Newcastle. So then to have a lot of touches is quite difficult. And when the ball was in play, the ball was in the air. So they didn't block anything. The ball was just in the air and it was duel after duel after duel after duel. Set pieces to defend, set pieces to attack. So there was not much football over the ground. So you were talking about Florian. But I also know that Mo would have loved to touch the ball a little bit more than he did in Newcastle. But he didn't touch the ball. He touched the ball more this time in Newcastle than he did last season. And he did touch the ball more this season against Newcastle, I'm talking about Mo, than he did again in the League Cup. So it's also the opposition you face, the playing style of the other team you face. And I said last season after Plymouth that if we would have been there with the starters, we probably also wouldn't have played a good game. And everybody was looking at me, what are you saying? No, that playing style of every ball long, every set piece thrown into your box is a playing style where it's not so easy to play your best game. And for Florian or for Mo or for Hugo, I don't think Hugo touched the ball a lot. And Cody didn't touch it probably a lot as well. So 40% playing time the last time that happened was 2010 when Stoke City faced Sam Allardyce team.
So obviously those are rare statistics.
Which was that? Was that Bolton? Blackburn. Okay.
Obviously those are rare statistics, but are you concerned that maybe some of the teams might try to use that as a way of trying to keep some of your attacking players away from the ball, being more direct, keeping the ball in there?
That is also not the first time that we faced this playing style. This happened last season as well. The difficult thing for us was that although the Newcastle players can play in a completely different style, really, really, really good as well, but this style suits them also really well if you look at how tall most of their players are. And the deliveries, the set pieces from Trippier are also high quality. So yeah, that makes it even more difficult. So I'm not sitting here saying that with the starters we would have had it as difficult against Plymouth as we had against Newcastle. But in general, it's a playing style where you constantly have to be ready for every single ball. And but we can do better. It's not only the playing style. We can do better than we did at Newcastle or at Plymouth. But it's not the first time we faced this playing style. Many teams did this playing style last season as well.
A little bit more data jousting with Arnie there, which I can't lie, I really did enjoy. First of all, I have to stress he was absolutely right to flag up the time of the ball in play. That had a really big effect on how much Liverpool were able to get Florian Wirtz the ball, particularly if it's sailing over his head more often than not. He did really push back on the idea that Newcastle had done anything particularly good to try and stop him getting the ball. But I must admit, when watching the game back, I did see more often than not, they did have that bank of five between Liverpool's defence and midfield, which is going to make it harder for you to try and pass the ball through it. I think only 4 of his teammates able to find him with the ball. So of those 19 passes that I mentioned, 9 of them came from Curtis Jones, which tells you how little everybody else was able to find him with the ball. But Slot was very, very keen to go hard on the idea that this wasn't necessarily a Liverpool problem. This was a Newcastle problem, or should I say, a problem that Newcastle created through their way of going about things. He referenced other games where this is happening, like the game at St James's Park, the League Cup final, and in terms of Mo Salah and his inability to get on the ball, which is a very fair point because Salah and Ekitike and Gakpo all didn't, I think none of them had more than 15 passes received. So they all were starved of the ball. And in Gakpo's situation, 4 of those passes came from Alisson. So it wasn't like there was a lot of passing play. But you then have to factor in the fact that Liverpool did play a whole second half with an extra player. So maybe they could have done a better job of that. And after spending 3 minutes dissecting exactly why it makes sense that Liverpool couldn't get their forwards the ball, Slot did acknowledge the fact that they have to do better. I did think it was kind of funny that he compared Newcastle and their style to Plymouth. This time, I don't think it was intentional shade because he did go on to talk about how Newcastle have lots of other styles of play, but this one suits him. But he was also very keen to stress that this isn't something new. His team have had to deal with this before and have dealt with it before and will be able to deal with it again. It'll be interesting for me, though, to see if there is any difference in how Liverpool tried to play it, because he is right. Other teams are going to do it. I mean, we might not necessarily see it from Arsenal, but now that they do have a big target man in Victor Gyökeres, they can perhaps maybe try to go long and go direct a little bit more. And then after Arsenal, after the international break, it's Burnley away. And yes, Burnley is a different proposition under Scott Parker than they were under Sean Dyche. But you think they're not going to try and go direct if they think Liverpool can't do it? And this is the key. Whenever Slot talks about these kind of things, about teams playing long ball football or not necessarily engaging with his team or going direct, going long, set pieces, etc., non-football, as he called it after the Newcastle game, every time he speaks about that, opposing managers are like, okay. It's like the whole bully paradox. If you act like it doesn't bother you, then everyone's going to stop doing it. Whereas if you act like it does bother you, you're going to see more and more and more of it. And this was something that Jurgen Klopp always fell down on because he just couldn't hide how much he hated it. And he was faced with it time and time again. We'll have to wait and see if Slot is able to be a little bit more calm and measured about the situation. But we also have to wait and see whether or not his Liverpool team will try and think different to counteract it. Here's hoping that they do. So there you have it. That is today's press conference review. Thank you all for coming with me on this little journey. I wanted to give another shout out to all my other work that I'm doing. I'm doing work with the Anfield Wrap. I'm doing work with the Late Challenge podcast. We've got a live show. The tickets have just gone on sale. So if you're looking to come and watch me and Robbo do a podcast live and in person, come on down to that. There'll be a new This Is Anfield column coming up very soon. I want to give a shout out to our friends at Anfield Central, LFC Data, Anything Liverpool, and This Is Anfield for all the help they've given in trying to grow this podcast, try to grow this channel. And that's what I have to ask you for. I'm very, very close to getting to 4,000 subscribers now. So if any of you out there are watching this who haven't subscribed already, please click that button. It really will help me push on through into the next stratosphere. Now, I will be at Anfield on Sunday, so keep an eye out for another match report after that game. But until then, let's all have a great weekend, shall we? See you soon.